Hello and welcome everyone to our presentation, which is entitled Sustaining Life on Earth, Arts-Based Responses to the Lived Experiences of COVID-19, Theory and Method. This is part 2 of our presentation. Hopefully you already attended part 1, where we presented the arts-based results of our project. And this is a project that we took on as part of the Arts-Based Global Consortium. The Arts-Based Global Consortium consists of this wonderful team of distinguished art-based scholars. Myself, I'm Nancy Gerber, Richard Sigismund, Karen Hannes, Madeline Centracchio, Jacelyn Biondo, Elizabeth Biffy, Marco Gemignani, and Lucia Carriera. We also worked alongside of an amazing group of co-researchers, and I won't read their names here, but we want to acknowledge their incredible contributions, and you will hear more about how they contributed throughout this presentation.
These are some narrative, okay, we're gonna restart that. These are some powerful excerpts from the narrative responses that we received from our co-researchers. Here comes every breath you breathe. I can't get away from myself. People are dying on ventilators in hospitals and in their rooms in care homes. A Black man under a policeman's knee cries for breath and for his mother.
So these are some of the comments that we collected and synthesized during our project, and we just wanted to start with that, since arts-based research really relies on the power of the art, and this was part of the art-based response that we collected.
So how did this all begin? The project began at the ECQI conference in Edinburgh, Scotland in February 2020. Little did we know that in about 2 months' time, the world was going to shut down. But in February of 2020, we initially presented a Game Changer Symposium. Out of that, a collaborative group of arts-based researchers came together to explore the possibilities for future research, and that we initiated this first project in response to the pandemic that quickly consumed the world.
Maybe 2 o'clock? Thanks, Arthur. Bye-bye. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, everyone.
Nancy, we need the next slide, please.
I know, and so good. Okay.
That's okay.
Dress rehearsal, dress rehearsal.
Dress rehearsal. We could edit out this gap if we want to.
Okay.
So who are we? So we are a group of scholars spanning 4 countries, 6 different specializations of academic interest, and that we represent numerous different paradigms of arts-based research. There is no single way to do arts-based research, and that extends across a realm of artists who are involved with their practice to non-artists who are interested in the potential of somatic, embodied, and arts-based responses, but who don't have formal training in the arts. So there are a tremendous range of skill sets that are brought together, and that for this particular project, there was the core research team that was formed at that Edinburgh conference in the Game Changer. And since then, we have also brought on co-researchers specifically for this COVID pandemic research project.
So in the middle of this pandemic that changed the world that we were living at the beginning at that time, we started wondering what does it mean, and what is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in the art world, in the process of in the art base, and what can the art-based research model do, and how can it contribute to better understand this transitioning moment of our life. So we developed a proposal for our art-based project, and we sent this proposal, this invitation out to a group of, we had an international call to better understand these questions. What is your lived experience of and relationship to the COVID-19 pandemic? And how would you express, portray, or describe your lived experience during and or after the COVID-19 pandemic? As you can see, at that time, we were thinking there was an after. There was still something that was not going to last until now, right? And we are still in the middle of it.
And I remember, Mark, I really remember clearly, I wrote out this email. I said, oh, let's do something with this. And Marco says, yeah, let's do it. I remember that so clearly. I was like, what? Are we really going to do this?
So want to talk a little bit about our processes. And it was really a multiphasic iterative process, both of narrative and arts-based responses to the COVID-19 pandemic from our co-researchers. So we first started by asking people to submit artwork about their experience within the pandemic. And the artwork came in multi-modalities. So we had paintings, we had sculptures, we had movement, we had music. And alongside of all of them, we had narratives that accompanied the artwork. And the primary core team began to organize this in ways that made sense in our own minds. And what came from that was our own reflections. And these reflections were in the form of other artwork. People made art responses reflecting on the art responses. We made narrative responses reflecting on them. Some people made charts and organized them in ways that were based on a priori themes or categories. We began to create some assemblages to organize these data and begin an analysis of type. The core team sat together via Zoom and did some group reflections. We sat with the co-researchers and reflected things back to them. We reflected on each other's responses, and we began to see a synthesis developing of a way that made sense in our minds of what people may have been experiencing. And this was part of the evaluation process that ended with first a video that was an assemblage of all of the artworks and some of the narrative responses, which then transitioned to a gallery space that gave a little bit more breadth and depth and allowance of sitting with the artwork in a way that the assemblage didn't allow for.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to just mention, Jacelyn, is that, you know, arts-based research, this is a very rigorous process that we engaged in here. So it wasn't just, oh, this art is nice, we're going to make it and reflect on our experience. This was a very robust research project.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was really seen in our process, I think, Nancy, in the way that we began forming things and constructing things and deconstructing them and reconstructing them, right? And we would constantly be looking at the artwork from different perspectives and through different artistic lenses and academic lenses and arts-based research lenses, and the constant reflexivity process that the core team was always going through, juxtaposing, deconstructing, evaluating, and then this kind of final notion of the reconstruction of the data that were collected in a way that created a new piece of artwork for dissemination. And just to be clear that it was so multiphasic and so multi-layered.
Yes, exactly. And part of what we did in this process, actually what we did initially, because we had all of these data, the visual data, the other arts forms, and we had a lot of narrative data. So we decided, actually from our proposal, we wanted to look at a few a priori categories, and that was the emotional impact, social framing, and aesthetic power of the arts-based and narrative data that we collected relative to the emotional impact, social framing, and power of the pandemic. And so how did these arts-based processes, what aspect did they reflect? And so what we did was we created a kind of like a qualitative coding matrix where we entered all the artwork and narratives and categorized them both by these predetermined categories and then the emergent categories that emerged. Emerged over time as we really sat with and played with the data.
Yes, I would like to say something about the process analysis in order to better understand how we identify the emerge categories that we saw in the previous slides. So the analysis includes narrative and also sensorial-based coding, responsive art making, and reflective narration of art submission. And also we have multiple interaction where pose in dialogue and also between the co-researchers.
Absolutely, Lucia. I think, we spent so much time together, which we think was just critical to doing this kind of research, because we spent so much time together and everyone had different perspectives on the data. And as we talked and reflected, it really shifted how we were able to understand what we were seeing and experiencing. So out of those discussions, we came up with certain ways in which we thought we were kind of handling the data or managing the data. And so we would read the narratives out loud together. We put them in categories. Some people, some of our co-researchers who are talented musicians did musical responses to some of the data as it was merging and forming. We developed a movie with accompanying images. We arranged the visual components. And this was something we talked a lot about, was how do we arrange these visual components? Do we put them together by meaning? Do we put them together by the speed and time, by like when we looked at them, the fastness or slowness, the implosion and reflection? We looked at different ways of putting the artwork together. We considered the dialectic between discursive and non-discursive kinds of processes in the art and the narrative, and the dialectic between the aesthetic impact and critical evaluation. In other words, we wanted to maintain the aesthetic essence of this project, the arts-based essence, the idea that we were using art as a method of investigation and dissemination. And so we wanted to preserve that while we also wanted to make sure that we evaluated the results in a way that reflected the robustness of the research.
So we were looking at our findings, and one of the foremost thoughts that we had was that you have to sometimes embrace the messiness of the arts-based research. And it was really integral in our process of just allowing things to become very messy and allowing ourselves to kind of sit in that space of messiness and kind of try to understand what it meant and what was trying to surface. The collective and emergent intersubjective reflective discourse was also really relevant in our practice, and just kind of challenging one another to continue to have these conversations, to continue to make new iterations of what we were seeing, and to allow that discourse between both the core team as well as the co-researchers. And then the final results that emerged in ways that we weren't quite aware of in the beginning, with regards to the fact that the beginning was quite messy and overwhelming and chaotic in a sense, and very much kind of in our faces. And then what came was an illumination and insight of the togetherness and the community and the collective that we were all experiencing together through the process as it resonated with our bodies and kind of settled into us. And that's really where we came up with these findings. And then we are hoping that you all as the community will also bring things in. So the final culmination, hopefully you've seen already, was the assemblage of the video that we made from all of the artworks that were submitted as part of the initial call. And we invite you to go back into the space, to go on the journey, to walk with us through the entire process of conceptualization, construction, analysis, and dissemination, and see if and how this project could be resonating with you all.
Yes, I think just in closing, I'd like to say, oh, that's a timer. I'd like to say that, you know, we invited co-researchers from all around the world to join us, and we were hoping, we invited arts-based research because we thought maybe they could speak for all of us in a certain way. Maybe they had the arts-based voices that could speak and resonate with a lot of people. But now we're bringing it to a larger group, and we really need to, would love to have feedback to see if this does indeed resonate with your experience of the pandemic. So we hope that you were able to go to the first presentation and leave your comments. Thank you.